This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at Agilent, a Fortune 500 company known for providing top-notch testing solutions to cannabis and hemp testing labs worldwide. Are you considering testing your cannabis in-house for potency? Agilent is giving away a free 1260 HPLC system for 1 year. If you're a cultivator, processor, or cannabis testing lab, you may qualify for this giveaway. By using Agilent's 1260 HPLC for potency testing, you will gain immediate access to your data, know exactly when to harvest, and increase your sample throughput. Don't miss out on this very cool giveaway. Swing over to bit.ly.com/cannabis-contest to answer a few quick questions to enter to win. Again, that's bit.ly.com/cannabis-contest. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, March 9th, 2021, and you're tuned in to episode 1027 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Yesterday in Mexico, lawmakers in the Chamber of Deputies, the lower of Mexico's two legislative bodies, voted in committee to approve a piece of proposed legislation to legalize marijuana, setting the bill up for a vote by the full chamber today or tomorrow. The bill, which is already passed by the Mexican Senate, and that is supported by President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, was approved by the Health and Justice Committees and would set up a taxed and regulated legal adult use marijuana program open to people ages 18 and up. This is all because of a 2018 Supreme Court decision that decreed that the nation's lawmakers figure out a way to do away with prohibition. The deadline set in that original decision has been kicked down the road a few times, but right now stands at April 30th, so it feels pretty good that we'll actually see this one hit. It will be big news when both Canada and Mexico have legal adult use marijuana. We have a good story out of Washington, D.C., where a federal oversight agency has found that the city of Washington, D.C. can take steps towards lifting marijuana prohibition, despite the fact that a piece of federal legislation prevents them from fully doing so. The federal law that blocks the citizens of Washington, D.C. from fully governing themselves as they see fit is the work of Republican Representative Andy Harris of Maryland, who you might know from recent headlines as being the guy who set off a metal detector in Congress because he was carrying a gun. A real piece of work. Yesterday, the Government Accountability Office issued a letter saying that D.C. officials can take preliminary steps towards legalization, just as long as they don't actually implement it, while Harris's legislation, an annual budget rider that needs to be approved each year, stands. That's important this year as both the House and Senate are in control of Democrats, who advocates hope are more amenable to allowing D.C. to run its own internal city affairs. There are a lot of moving parts on this one, so I'd suggest popping over to Marijuana Moment for the full read. Deborah Borchard takes us out on our final top story in the day with some big news out of the world of legal psychedelic medicine, where the biotech company MindMed has raised $15.4 million in investment through the sale of 6 million units of stock to the investment firm Canaccord Genuity. The deal, which is expected to close today, is part of a larger growing storyline around medicinal psychedelics, their investment-backed funding, and the overall future growth of the potential market. This is something that is important and worthy of generally tracking. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Agilent, a Fortune 500 company known for providing top-notch testing solutions to cannabis and hemp testing labs worldwide. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Agilent is giving away a free 1260 HPLC system for 1 year. If you've been considering testing your cannabis in-house for potency, then you need to listen up. Swing over to bit.ly.com/cannabis-contest to enter for your chance to win. When you use Agilent's 1260 HPLC system, you get instant access to all the right data about your cannabis, which narrows down exactly when you should harvest. That means you don't spend a minute more growing your flower than you need to, and that you'll harvest your crop at its peak. One more time, swing over to bit.ly.com/cannabis-contest to enter your company in for a chance to win 1 free year's use of Agilent's 1260 HPLC system. Big thanks to everyone in Agilent for the support that helps us keep the news lights on. All right, time for the Blitz. We jump up to Canada, where government agency Statistics Canada has released data from a poll that asked Canadians about their use of marijuana during the last year of pandemic living. According to those numbers, a touch over 1/3 of cannabis consumers in Canada have increased the amount of marijuana they use, with the vast majority of those folks saying it was to relieve stress or boredom. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont was asked about the drive to legalize adult-use marijuana in his state and said that he would peg the chances of it happening this year at 60-40. Governor Lamont also said that while a proposed bill he put forth to set up a taxed and regulated market keeps Homegrow illegal, he doesn't, quote, see it as the end of the world, unquote, referring to Homegrow, so maybe there's a chance to carve away that prohibition ahead of any final passage. Connecticut is fairly surrounded now with legalized states or neighbors moving to do so, so there's plenty of general energy for a shift in policy. Pop over to Marijuana Moment for more on this and to hear Governor Lamont's interview. We have another Marijuana moment with Kyle Yeager checking in on the situation for legalized marijuana reform in Hawaii. There is right now a proposed bill in the works in Hawaii's state legislature to set up a taxed and regulated sales program, but Governor David Ige has some reservations on the whole matter, which he outlined a bit yesterday during an interview with local news station KITV. The governor seems hung up on the federal prohibition of marijuana, ignoring the fact that there are now 14 U.S. states allowing for adult use sales and 36 where medical cannabis is allowed, including Hawaii. This is a story worth keeping a close eye on as the legalization legislation is moving along at a good clip, and Governor Ige has not yet said whether he'd sign the bill into law or not. Another storyline, another proposed bill. Colorado State Senate Bill 56 is a proposed measure that would require schools to create policies allowing staff to store the medical cannabis products of students for use during the school day. Right now, medical cannabis patients attending schools in Colorado can at least have their medicine administered on school grounds, thanks to a 2016 law called Jack's Law, named after medical cannabis patient and activist Jack Split, who sadly died the same year at the age of 16. But medical cannabis cannot currently be stored at school and must be brought in each day by caretakers. If SB 56 were to pass, that would change. The bill is set to next go before the Appropriations Committee after it was approved by the Education Committee just last month, though no exact date has yet been scheduled. This is something that needs to happen in every state. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is being criticized by medical cannabis advocates in her state for the use of state funds to pay for a lawsuit seeking the overturning of a citizens' ballot initiative passed in November to legalize adult-use marijuana. One of the more interesting and crazy twists in this storyline is the fact that, at one point, South Dakota was paying the legal bills of both sides of an argument before its Supreme Court over the legalization ballot measure, with Attorney General Javen Ravensborg defending the will of the people against legal attacks by prohibitionist police officials acting on behalf of Governor Noem, a noted prohibitionist with a deep history of anti-democratic behavior. South Dakota AG Ravensborg has since withdrawn completely from this case, which still has plenty of news legs yet to run out. If you have the state on your radar, maybe not a bad one to read in full today. U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tim Vilsack has approved a set of rules and regulations for how industrial hemp can be grown, processed, and sold. This long-developing storyline has the rules set to go into effect on March 22nd after they were released for public consumption just in January, following a 2-year development process. You can pop over to Marijuana Moment for another Marijuana Moments, and where you can also find a direct link to the full set of federal industrial hemp rules and regulations. As we always do, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. Our final headline on the day has us wrap up in New Jersey, where there is apparently work underway by state lawmakers to ease up on some of the punishments on the books for growing marijuana. Even though adult use and medical cannabis are now legal in New Jersey, growing it for adult use reasons is still very much not allowed and could get a person 10 to 20 years in jail just for having 10 or more plants growing. Senate President Steve Sweeney told reporters that those currently harsh punishments were too harsh and that work was being done on cleanup legislation to dial it back. That's great and all, but it really needs to be dialed all the way back to being fully legal. Legalization is not full legalization if it does not allow for Homegrow. Another good one to keep an eye on the long term. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Agilent, and to our awesome Patreon listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the Patreon listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.